Thank you for listening today on Revealing Wholeness, sponsored by Infinity Whole Health. Check out our website at infinityWholeHealth.com, where we are revealing the eternal in each individual, the infinite in the individual. The creativity is made manifest. Limitation is let go. Now, here's your host, Dr. Troy Munson.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson at Infinity Whole Health. And please check out our podcast at Revealing Wholeness. You can find it on iHeartRadio and a lot of different podcast sites. And tonight is our final installment of Indiscretions. And we're going to be talking about overtraining and sex. And so how to have life's cakes and eat them too. Indiscretions or no, by the way. And so let's start with overtraining. And so overtraining is something that as we go for hours in physical activity, like for me, I loved playing volleyball when I was younger. I would play for literally 12 hours a day when I was really young and didn't have to have a job. And at summer, I would just go to the beach every day. And I would start at noon and be done by 8, 9 o'clock at night. And just demanding so much out of my body. I started pulling quad muscles, calf muscles, ended up throwing my shoulder at age 28. And so, just injury after injury after injury, because nobody ever pulled me aside and said, hey, Troy, if you're going to train this hard, you either got to step up your diet or you've really got to start doing some resting. And so here's some things that you want to at least think about. So for those of you that maybe are younger athletes that are listening to this, or parents having younger athletes, or maybe you're an older person wondering, hey, how do I have this stamina to do my athletic event? Maybe you're going hiking for 8 hours or running a marathon and you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And you're wondering, how do I do that and not tear my body down so fast? So here's some ideas that you can start incorporating into your own regimen that are very, very helpful. So first and foremost, the one most important thing is water. And people say water all the time, but I want to give you the whys behind water. In our cells, when we're running chemical reactions, we're producing a lot of heat. The reason that we are right now 98.6 degrees is because we have chemical reactions happening in every single cell of our body, and those reactions are heat producing, and quite a bit. We literally have heat shock proteins around those chemical reactions trying to pull heat off of them because it can get too warm. And so water helps us handle that heat and dissipate it out of the body as fast as possible, especially when we're demanding so much out of our cells and muscles as well. So water cannot be overstated at this point. I'm not asking you to drink when you're not thirsty. I still think you should drink when you're thirsty, but I'm always cautious on folks that are drinking water when they're not thirsty. And I've made podcasts on that with, if you're going to drink that much water, then you need to do some electrolyte, reinvigoration. Even just putting some Himalayan sea salt in your water, just a little pinch, can be very helpful in re-putting in electrolytes in the system if you're going to be drinking a lot of water like that, even as athletes. Next is calcium. What helps muscles work but calcium? Calcium helps muscles contract as well as relax, but also buffers the blood because of high lactic acid. So a buffer is something that's controlling acidity and alkalinity. And as we work out and produce more and more lactic acid, we get more acidic. And so calcium helps buffer that. Calcium also is in control of protein metabolism in our gut. And so it's important to have that because as we're working out more, we need to repair our muscles, which is protein. So calcium. And there are good and bad out there. So if you're not certain, please message me. Let's talk about that a little bit more. I've made podcasts on calcium as well. Next, trace minerals. In order to burn up lactic acid in the body, we have to kind of understand a little bit about how lactic acid got there. So our muscles burn sugar or ketones. You've heard of people in ketosis. Well, ketones and sugar, when they hit what we call the Krebs cycle, they run through that Krebs cycle and they kick off or produce ATP. If I go to a store and spend a $20 bill to make things happen to get stuff, in our body, ATP is that spending currency. ATP runs all those chemical reactions that are very warm in our body. Well, that ATP turns into ADP. So it goes from adenosine triphosphate, 3 phosphate molecules, to adenosine diphosphate, 2 phosphate molecules, because when a phosphate molecule pulls off that ATP, it releases a lot of heat to make that chemical reaction happen. And so as we run a sugar molecule through that cycle, the first time it produces 2 lactic acid molecules. We split that sugar and make 2 lactic acid molecules and 12 ATP. Then we take those lactic acid and run them through again, and we produce another certain amount of ATP. Overall, roughly 38 ATP in the whole thing. And so if we don't have enough minerals to make that happen, we now accumulate lactic acid in the cell, and now we're sore. So trace minerals help us burn up that lactic acid. And I've proved it time and time again. I'll have clients come in and they say, I'm sore from working out. And I'll say, hey, pick up a bottle of trace minerals. And I say, at least 3 morning and night, and you might take another 3 before you work out. They'll come back within a few days and they'll say, what did you do? Why am I not sore? What's happening? And they want to know how I can change things physiologically so fast. And so this is how we do it, because we can burn up lactic acid much more efficiently than our body is. But if we don't have the mineral content, you can't do that. So I keep thinking about me being younger. Man, what would it have been like to do some calcium and trace minerals? Would I have not been pulling my quad all the time and my right calf, and now having a knee that I blew out at age 42 that I had to repair? All these things I keep wondering, man, it'd been nice to avoid that stuff. And so trace minerals become big. And if you find trace minerals naturally in our diet, you're going to find a lot of vitamins and minerals around them that become very important to us too. So next is B vitamins, and specifically B1. B1 helps also that Krebs cycle burn up that lactic acid. It can be very important. Do not go buy a synthetic B complex vitamin. It's not worth it. Make sure you're getting a natural source. Liver, nutritional yeast, blackstrap molasses, those are good sources for complete B vitamins. Last is the herbal stuff. Now, there's some people out there that will talk about a lot of herbs for working out, sex, things like that. But one of my favorite for burning up lactic acid is Schizandra. And Schizandra is also excellent for even just mood stabilization, feeling more calm, feeling more at ease. Excellent herb. But it's kind of difficult to get good herbs. And I'm going to talk about that at the end of the sex part of this talk, which now we're beginning. So hang in there for talking about herbs and how to get them good. So sex. What do we need in order to make sex happen in a better way inside of our body? Now, we can think about, it doesn't matter whether you have sex once in a great while or you're having sex once a day. You're still going to need to do things to help repair the body and prepare it for that kind of an event, so to speak. And men and women may be different, but women have to produce lubricant. That's a protein. They need hydration, just like men do. Men might have the bigger quantity of fluid that we produce, and it does require that as men, we need to be a little bit more careful about what our diet's like if we're going to be engaging with our spouse in sex far more than just average. So those are things to consider. So let's go through the list of things that we really want to be able to do for the body as we go through that intimacy act. First and foremost, zinc, copper, and calcium. All those what we call macro minerals are important. So calcium we've already talked about, muscle contraction. I'll have clients that have said, hey, my erections are not as firm as they used to be. I'll say, okay, well, we're going to start with something simple like calcium. We're going to make sure that those muscles are working correctly. I'll have clients tell me that I'm getting some cramps in the middle of sex. I'm like, you definitely need calcium. And so preparing for that act is important in many, many different ways, not just the final act, so to speak. And so zinc and copper are big, big minerals used in not only the testes in men, but also in the ovaries of women. Their work reproduce a lot of hormones that help us with that act. So very, very vital. And we talked about trace minerals with overdoing working out, but it goes the same route when it comes to helping the endocrine glands, the pituitary, the thyroid, the adrenals, the testes, the ovaries, produce their hormones. We need those trace minerals in order to help them do that. So if we're going to have a good, strong orgasm, like I'll have clients say, hey, my orgasm is getting less and less and less. That is a pituitary response producing oxytocin. And so we need to help the pituitary do that, and it needs trace minerals to make that happen, not just the copper and the zinc, but it needs a full complement of trace minerals, as well as the vitamins that come with those trace minerals. Next is hydration, obviously. In order for both the male-female body to produce those kinds of fluids for lubrication, for ejaculation, all that, you're going to need to hydrate. I have had clients who have literally had heat exhaustion having sex. They're not hydrated well at all. And so important. And if you're in warmer climates, obviously, you probably already have figured out that that's going to be important to you. And so next is protein. Now we talked about lubrication. We think, well, isn't it just kind of like watery? Well, yes, it is, but it's also a lot of proteins there. And so we need those proteins in our diet as well as to digest them to make sure that that stuff happens. And so last but not least is a great herb that I use on a fair amount of clients called tribulus. Tribulus is a difficult herb to get good stuff. The best stuff comes from Bulgaria. And most of the other tribulus is kind of adulterated, meaning that it really doesn't have the potency of what it needs in it to help our bodies produce testosterone in men and progesterone in women. And so tribulus, I can't speak highly enough. Most herbal companies are going to take the loose herb and put it in a capsule or possibly tablet it. A few companies are going to try to make extracts, like pulling the nutrients out of the tribulus. It can be very tricky. And so I use companies that definitely know what they're doing, and they can pull out the active ingredients. They test it through a gas chromatograph to make sure it has the things we're looking for, as well as then tablet it without destroying it so that we can get it to us and actually have something that's of value. Now, granted, when you're spending that much time to tablet an herb and make it very potent, you're going to pay for it. But when you buy tribulus from a store that's in a capsule and it's costing you, $12, but it does nothing for you, how does that even make any sense? I think I'll spend the $42 to get a good bottle of tribulus and know that what I'm going to take is actually going to do something in my body and feel the difference. So tribulus can be excellent. So again, a little bit on the Schizandra that we talked about before. It's important to know the company that you're getting it from. If you have questions, concerns about anything that I discussed with overtraining, or if you want to know more, please feel free to message me, email me, easy to do. And again, catch us every second and fourth Wednesday of the month right here on Facebook Live, or if you're catching me on YouTube, wait for the next one to come out in October of 2020. I'm going to pull really some information together that we all need to know for our children, because right now we're in this really weird time of our children staying at home and virtually going to school, spending lots of time in front of a screen. The blue screen, the radiation coming from it, cell phones, all the things that we now have to demand of our children to do that probably isn't very fair. How do we help their bodies cope with the screen time, with the radiation, with the isolation where they can dip down into depression type symptoms? We're going to kind of explain why that's going on. How do we combat it? What can we do to help our children so that it doesn't wreck them until we realize that we probably should be back to school with everybody and it isn't as dangerous as we think. But again, another topic on that. If you have a topic that you would like me to talk about in the future, love to do that. But catch us in October for children going back to school virtually. And until then, I'm Dr. Troy Munson on Revealing Wholeness podcast site, as well as Infinity Whole Health. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach Dr. Munson at 360-893-8586 or email him at chiroman@dr.com. That's chiroman@dr.com. Check out our current workshop schedule on Facebook at Infinity Whole Health.